All right, we are recording. I am just waiting a couple seconds and we're going to go live on. Oh, there we go. Our stream is here. So I'm going to hit go live. If you're already watching us on Facebook, hello, there we go. I had to mute that. And we're going live on LinkedIn. Okay. Everyone, bear with us if you're watching us live right now as we get this live stream up and running. And it looks like it's working in all the places it needs to be working. So we can go ahead and get started here. So welcome all. And we're gonna get rolling here. So welcome to Remote Leadership Unleashed, where we explore expert perspectives on hiring, managing, and scaling distributed teams. I'm really excited today to have everyone here joining us for this episode that's going to be filled with valuable insights and actionable strategies. But first, Quickly Hire is the fastest way to add vetted freelancers to your team. At Quickly Hire, we understand the importance of assembling top-tier talent for your business, whether you need a developer, a content marketer, designer, virtual assistant, or any other technical or creative professional, we've got you covered. The Quickly Hire platform connects you with highly vetted freelancers who match your budget and requirements, ensuring that you find the perfect fit for your team. So today, we have a very special guest joining us, Brian Richards. Brian is the creator and training director at WPSessions.com, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And that is where he provides training to businesses and developers working with WordPress. With extensive experience in managing and hiring distributed teams, Brian brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. Together, we will be delving into the intricacies of remote leadership, uncovering key strategies for success, and sharing valuable insights that you can implement in your own business. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, and get ready to unleash the full potential of your remote team with Remote Leadership Unleashed and our esteemed guest, Brian. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a beautiful introduction. I
Oh, thank
feel
you.
very welcomed.
Good. I'm very happy to have you here. It's great to have you here and to be having this conversation. If I missed anything, if there's anything you would like to add to that introduction of yourself, feel free to throw that in
No,
now.
that was great. I feel like I should swipe that for future bios that I need to
All
put
right.
together.
Awesome. I'll share it with you after the call. Awesome. So we're here to talk about remote leadership. I'm going to ask some questions. You're going to answer them. You're going to share some stories. Maybe you could tell folks a little bit about your experience as experience leading a remote team.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is an important part of my story because I ran from it for so long. So I have a weird and tangled background that brought me to here. But one part of this that's relevant to today is I was frequently hired as an outside contractor to help with development projects. And then someone would like me enough to bring me into the team. And then they would recognize that I had an ability to think systematically about like the whole process. And they say, we'd like you to lead this team. And eventually, that got me all the way to the director of technology position at Crowd Favorite, where I was leading a team of 25 or 30 developers distributed all around the globe. But each time I moved into one of those next rungs, I'm like, oh, I don't like this. I need to get out of here. Right? Like, I don't like being in a team where I'm expected to be at the same place every time of every day. I need to go back to independent work. Like, oh, I don't like leading the team of people. I like doing the work. I don't like leading the team of leaders. I like being closer to the work that's being. And eventually, I embraced it. That was when I progressed all the way through at Crowd Favorite, and I realized I enjoy it. And the most interesting puzzle. I like solving puzzles, and the most interesting puzzle to solve are people. So it was once I finally leaned into it. It was incredible. It was a really great time.
That's awesome. And that is a big piece of successful management too, is understanding people. So that it makes sense that you were successful with that if that's a big passion of yours. I love it. That's interesting. I'm sure we're going to touch a lot more on that experience as we progress in our conversation today. So let's start with the first question here. remote teams, you might have full-time hires, you might have contractors, part-time hires, all of that. This can be A, B, C, all of the above. But we're talking remote. So these are folks not sitting at a desk next to you, right? For the most part. Um, how do you keep your remote team motivated? Happy to do the work, happy to show up, put the time in, and always working toward, making things better.
Yeah, that is maybe the biggest question of the list. Um, and for anyone who's listening who is struggling with that, I have some wonderful but unfortunate news, which is you cannot motivate anyone to do anything. You cannot. You do not possess that skill. And if you do possess that skill, you are living on a higher plane than the rest of us. However, you can create an environment where people feel motivated. And or a better way to think about that is people feel engaged, because people who feel engaged in what they're doing are motivated and desire to do more of whatever that is. And there's a lot that goes into that. One of my favorite books that I read that finally got my brain to flip and enjoy and embrace leading and managing teams was or is 12 colon elements of great managing. And it talks about all of the different elements that you need to bring to the table as a manager to get people engaged and help them to feel motivated. Um, and one of the top one is knowing what's expected. You need people on the team need to know what is expected of them in order to recognize that they're showing up and actually delivering on what is expected. You need to provide materials and equipment that they need. You need to create an environment where they have the opportunity to do their best work. I don't know about the rest of you, but personally, I am not engaged or motivated if I'm not putting in my best.
Yeah.
As a school student, um, I had good grades, but I wasn't really committed to getting good grades because I felt it was super easy. So much of the stuff in grade school, and then in college, I recognized for me, my degree didn't matter at the end. So I was just there to learn. I was taking classes that were interesting to me, but the coursework didn't matter because I knew my GPA didn't matter, so therefore my grade didn't matter as long as I was passing. Um, and so I didn't believe that those classes require the best of me, and I put the best of me into other things. And that will happen for employees and teammates if they're like, this doesn't require my best work. Everyone wants to do their best, and they're going to find a way to do their best wherever that happens to be. And that might not be in the team if you don't have that. There's a lot more to it than that, but uh, a couple more that are rather salient to this are my opinions seem to count, right? Everyone wants their opinion to mean something. And everyone wants to have a buddy at work. A lot of employers, especially major corporations, uh, fail to recognize the value of just having a close friend at work, um, for keeping people engaged, keeping people motivated.
Yeah, and that can be really hard in the remote setting, right?
Right. Yeah. When you're super distributed and you don't get to see, interact with. And so
Hmm.
one of many great ways to facilitate that is to have a Slack group or some
Yeah.
kind of real-time chat that has specifically designated outlets for people to be themselves, to show up and bring the wacky, funny things they're finding on the internet, share photos of their pets, talk about interesting things that they did over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we do in our network of freelancers as well as we've created kind of a space for them to connect because they all work with clients and on, different teams, but having a space to connect with other freelancers is also can be valuable too. So yeah, that's a big one. I'm glad you touched on that because I think that does make it. It depends on the person, of course, but for lots of
Yeah.
folks, that can make a big difference. You touched on a lot there. A lot of good tips and tricks for motivating. But bottom line, you can't motivate someone
Yeah.
that's not going to be motivated, right?
Yeah. All you can do
Yeah,
is create the environment where people feel wanted, welcomed, engaged, challenged.
yep,
Um,
and
in
bring
all
the
those
right people
things.
into that environment. And once you bring people in, you start realizing if they're the right person or not. So yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
bingo.
you can only do what you can do, and then the rest is up to them. Um, very good. Let's shift gears a little bit now. So let's talk about hiring. So this is a little bit of a two-part question. Um, First of all, what factors do you consider when deciding which position to hire for next on your team? And then what are the qualities you look for when you're hiring those? And let's keep this to freelancers and contractors for now, if that makes a difference. If it doesn't, that's fine too. But how do you determine which position? And then what are kind of the top things you look at when you're looking to bring someone on?
Yeah. Well, let's start with right. What kind of position? What kind of work needs to be done um, for putting myself in the position of, say, a small business owner who is trying to grow from themselves to +1, or a team of 2 or 3 to 4 or 5. Right, going from 0 to 1 is super difficult. Going from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 is super difficult. And then as you start to add more, like you've already done it enough times, you recognize like, in general, it's I don't like doing this kind of work, or I'm not the best at this kind of work. Right, this is not me bringing my best self, so I should hire someone who can. Right, I'm not going to do my own taxes ever again. The last time I did my own taxes, I was 18 and living at home, and it was super easy. I filled out the 1040 easy form. Here's how much I made. I am a minor and a dependent, and please give me back all of the taxes that you initially took from me. And that was it. From age 19 on, I had too many different things going on. I'm like, I'm never doing my own taxes. That was an easy thing to hire out. A lot of people don't consider a tax accountant as a contractor that is helping them with their business, but that is. And for a lot of
Absolutely.
businesses, that is often the first one that you hire. And if you are still trying to do your own taxes, I would encourage you to stop immediately and find a competent professional instead of using the own things like, oh, I can do it. Don't save your energy for the things that you like the most. And that's probably the most succinct way of like put your energies towards the things that make you come alive, that are the like only you can do or that you enjoy doing the most. um, Sometimes you do also have to give up the things you enjoy doing the most because there are just so many things that need to happen. But initially, prioritize the things that you really enjoy and the things that only you can do, maybe the things that drive the greatest amount of income for the business, and then start considering all of the other stuff as secondary and figure out, do I have enough of this other work that I could pay someone else to do it profitably? And then in terms of finding the right person, you are absolutely correct. Looking for a contractor versus looking for a permanent teammate are two different sets of criteria that I usually evaluate. If I need, say, a short term, is it a short term project or a long term project? It's a short term
Mhm.
project. As long as they're good at what they do and can deliver on what is expected, if they have a reputation for doing that, that's a pretty easy decision. If it's someone that I have to work with on an ongoing basis, like a video editor in my case, or a graphics designer, project manager, things like that, it's like I want to find someone that I can have a conversation with, at least, because everyone wants to have a friend at work, right? Everyone wants
Yep.
to. You don't want to surround yourself with people that you don't want or enjoy talking to. Um, and so I'll look for uh, testimonials that they have. I'll look at their portfolio, and any kind of signal that I can find that says, yeah, this person knows how to do this and has examples and history of doing it well. Uh, and that usually comes out pretty quickly with the way they answer questions that you have about the task that needs to be done. And many are forthcoming of like, yeah, here's a project that I worked on. I couldn't put it on my website, but I did this thing and I did it in this way. And
And just being able to speak on it, yes, makes it pretty
yeah,
clear whether they're the ones that did it or not, right?
yep. Yeah. And then sometimes withholding some of the details just to see, like, do they know to ask about this kind of a thing?
Hmm.
Um, or, um, right. And in that case, it helps that you know how to do the work.
That's true.
And so
Yeah,
the
in this
example,
case,
if you're,
because that's what we're talking about here are things that you can do, you've been doing, but they're not the best use of your time. It's not
yeah.
contributing. Your time is better somewhere else, right? So yeah, that's definitely part of it as well in this case anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah, really, I love that. And it's something that we always talk about also at Quickly Hires, when we're making internal hires, or really when we're bringing people on to the network as well, it's like, is this someone that you would want to work with? Is this someone that you would work with, right? And and that's a spectrum, of course. People are very different, but having it be someone that you enjoy working with, that makes all the difference, especially if you're going from one person, just yourself, to two, right? You're going to
Mhm.
talk to that person a lot. They're going to be the only person you're talking to sometimes when it comes to work. So it's got to be someone that you enjoy talking to, you feel like you can talk to, and that you understand each other for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. Great
A lot of
tips.
a lot of trust is also involved in bringing that first person into the team, where you've like, okay, I've been running all of the stuff, and now I need to trust you to do any part of it at least as good as I was doing. Ideally, better would be best.
The goal, right?
Uh, yeah, and it takes a while to develop that trust sometimes.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Which brings us to our next question, which is establishing trust and accountability with a remote team, a distributed team. Um, you read, there's a lot of think pieces out there right now, right? About the larger businesses bringing people back to the office, getting back to the office. Managers don't know how to manage without having a team physically there that they can go stop by and say, hey, how's work going? Those sorts of things. It's a style of work that a lot of people feel really strongly about. And a lot of the reasons for that they give are trust and accountability, right? So, how do you work to establish trust and accountability on a distributed team?
I think that deliverables are the greatest litmus test when it comes to trust. And uh, I like to give people small things to start with to see just how well that works. And a lesson that a lot of people learn the hard way, or sometimes don't learn at all. And I think this one came from a book called The Five Temptations of the CEO, um, where uh, it's easier to fire someone than to properly hold them accountable, because properly holding people accountable is a different kind of work than assigning a task. And the simplest way to hold someone accountable is to just check in initially, not when it's too late for something to happen. But let's say you've given someone a project that is due on Friday and it's Monday. Uh, you just, as a team, you theoretically have check-in moments. Maybe you're checking in daily, right? You've got a daily stand-up or just a daily asynchronous check-in on Slack. Like, hey, what are you working on today? As I augment other teams over time, always liked to start out the day like, hey, everybody, here's what I'm working on today, and here's what I got done yesterday.
Mhm.
And if any priorities need to change, let me know. And then I try at the end of the day to say, like, here's what I got done, here's what I'm planning on working on tomorrow. And that gives the other person a chance to redirect my attention. Um, that's what I want to get as the person who's managing. And not a lot of people are forthright when they do that, because communication is hard, especially when you
It
don't
is.
get a thing done. Especially when you don't get the thing done. Nobody wants to say, hey, I know I said I was going to have this done, but I don't have it done. And that's a terrible thing to find out on Friday, but it's a totally fine thing to find out on Tuesday, possibly a totally fine thing to find out on Wednesday. Could be a detrimental thing to find out on Thursday. And so if you've given someone something that's low stakes, you probably don't need to check in. But it's good to build the habit of like, hey, it's Wednesday. We talked about this thing on Monday. You still feeling good about it being done on Friday? Have you had a chance to start it yet? Have you run into any roadblocks? Any questions that I could answer? No, okay. And then Thursday, hey, just wanted to make sure, are we still on track for tomorrow? Everything looking good? Okay, good. Uh, and then if something goes wrong on Friday, that's an entirely different conversation
Yeah.
on them versus you said on Monday, like, hey, could you do this thing for me on Friday? And the list of things that you're talking about, and they go, oh, yeah, yeah, sure. And then on Friday, you're like, hey, did you do that thing? Like, I didn't remember that that thing existed.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
love that. The holding people accountable by checking in, asking for progress updates, and establishing a culture of that too, right? Where you have, maybe it is that daily stand up or an asynchronous kind of stand up on Slack or whatever you use, but where everyone just knows they have to show up, say what they did yesterday, say what they're working on today. And that way everyone knows, and whoever's managing those people, and say like, hey, instead of working on that today, how about we, put the focus on this so we can get that done by Friday, because I don't see it on your list of things to get done.
Bingo. Yeah. And there's a potentially dangerous line. Nobody likes a micromanager, so don't
Yeah.
micromanage anybody. Don't assign them something and then ask repeatedly about that something and then try to get back in and do it. Um, but initially, like for the first few tasks I'm talking about, like check in a few more times than you think is necessary, and then take your foot off the gas a bit. Like eventually, it's okay to give them something on Monday and not ask about it again until Thursday or even Friday sometimes.
Yeah.
But then when expectations are missed, this is the other very important part. Uh, have the conversation then about the missed expectations and try to find a way to make sure those don't happen in the future. And that can be a conversation like, hey, what do you think we could do differently next time to make sure we don't miss a deadline like this?
Yeah.
Um,
But it's important to point those things out and talk about them when they happen, because if not, there's no one knows that they need to do better. Exactly. So
Bingo.
that's important as well.
And then you get to the end, right? We're 6 months in, like, man, they keep missing these small things, and I don't think we can ever change it at this point. And then it's tempting to say like they're not a good fit, and we need to let them go, or I need to let them go. When the
Yeah.
reality is like you did not do a good job leading them, you didn't manage their expectations, um, you
Yeah.
didn't actually hold anyone accountable.
I love that. And just by being consistent with that sort of practice, that is establishing accountability, obviously, but also trust within the team, and putting up guide rails and letting people know how they can be successful. And I think in general, um, want that in a job, to know that they're doing what they should be doing. Okay, so let's jump to the next question. And we are trying to keep this to just around a half hour. And we're doing pretty good. So good job, Brian. Great responses, and
Thanks.
jam-packed with value. So let's talk about, this is sort of in the same vein, but effective communication and collaboration. And I'd love to sort of go on the asynchronous team, as well as distributed, right? So you can have a distributed team where everyone's working all over the world, but maybe you're all still working 9 to 5 and you can talk to each other in real time all the time. But what about the teams that you're not working the same hours? How do you stay on the same page, have effective communication and collaboration in that kind of environment?
Yes, this is my favorite kind of teamwork, completely asynchronous, autonomous work being done. It's my favorite kind to participate in. And I love helping people realize this in their own business whenever possible. I have always felt when working in a team, working regular 9 to 5 hours, that it's constraining. Like it makes me feel stuck. Like, I'd like to just take off and have lunch with my spouse today, or just play with my kids this morning for a bit extra time, and can't because, well, I have to show up because this is when we all agreed we were going to get the work done. And for certain things, you can't help that, right? Like meetings need to
Right.
happen when people are available, et cetera. But a lot of work can happen anytime. And that was something I prided myself on as manager, and had to when my team was literally all around the world. Probably the most challenging teammates to work with. I was managing a small team who were based in India, and our times were opposite of each other, almost as opposite as they could have been. I'm like, well, we don't overlap at all, really. And what the process that I found worked really well for them was to outline the tasks that I wanted them to work on at the end of my day for them to start while I'm asleep, and then check in with them first thing in the morning and be like, hey, how did it go? Where'd you get stuck on? What do you need help with? What do we need to work on next? Um, and then I had my workday to think through and process and figure out the right thing to go. And then I, by the end of my workday, have it figured out and assigned, and then they would do the work, and I would check in on it the next day. There was one team that I was on where we were able to offer round the clock development for a project because there was, folks in Eastern US working 9 to 5. Before that, there were folks in Central Europe working 9 to 5. And before that, there were folks in Asia Pacific working 9 to 5. And so just like all around the clock, something was happening. And that was maybe the most efficient, like, okay, here's the piece that I got done. Now it's on to you. And
like a relay
it
race
could have been
almost, yeah.
it could have been very uncomfortable. It was for a project that had a really tight turnaround, that had a very high profile client. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, we can do this. And then we did. It was really fun. For the less intense stuff, like just day to day, let's work asynchronously. My favorite way to do that is just to have, as I mentioned earlier, established check-in times and process, right? Like every morning, everyone on the team reports, here's what I got done yesterday, here's what I'm working on today, and these are some blockers that I currently have, is the other thing that I tried to work into rotation. Like, this is what I'm stuck on, but this is what I'm working on instead. Or at the end of the day, here's what I worked on, here's what I got finished, here's what I'm stuck on, and here's what I'm planning on working on tomorrow. Same idea, but a regular daily check-in. And then it doesn't matter when the work is happening. If we don't have meetings to overlap, we can just do that. We can check in periodically. Basecamp is famous for trying to support this kind of workflow. And Automatic famously has this for their globally distributed team as well. They use, they call them P2 blogs, named for the theme and plugin stuff that powers them. But it's just, an intranet site for the team to chime in with, here's what I'm working on, and here's what I got done, and here's where I'm stuck, and here's where I need feedback.
So how important in this kind of scenario are, established processes and workflows?
Paramount. This does not work if you don't have a defined, established process. And process can be a scary thing for some people. Like, I don't know what my process. Like, everybody has a process for something, right? Just last week, I was part of an event retreat for event producers, and I asked, what's your process for making coffee in the morning? And people rattled off, like, I do this, 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 this. And then I asked, okay, how do you change that process when you're out of the materials to make coffee? And they go, well, that doesn't happen. It doesn't, because processes don't exist in isolation. What's your process for making sure you never run out of stuff for the coffee? Like, when I'm running low, I make a note, and the next time at the grocery store, I buy the stuff that I need, or I have it on a regular shipment. And so start small with your processes of like, okay, this is what a check-in looks like. I want to know what you're working on, what blockers you have, where you need feedback, and what you're planning on working on next. And okay, that's the process for defining how we talk about what we're doing. Now the process for how frequently we're doing that. Okay, now the process for the manager for checking those things. So it doesn't do any good for people to just be shouting those into the void. So as the manager, you have to read those and provide feedback where necessary. Most of the time, you probably don't need to provide feedback, but when there are blockers, it's like, okay, this is something that I need to do to help unblock this thing. And then you build up a series of small interconnected processes, because without those, it's chaos. You can't get work done in any kind of predictable manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think, processes are absolutely important. It all goes in, everything you've kind of said up until this point feeds into that as well, right? So you have the process of the daily check-ins, and the process that feeds into those daily check-ins that empowers people to do the work that they can then report on, and all of that. And I love the asynchronicity, the impact that asynchronicity can have if you are working with folks across the globe. That someone's not waiting all afternoon for you to sign off on something, right? You've given them everything they need to do their work when they clock in, or get on the computer, whatever you want to call it. And then they leave you with whatever they need from you, and you get that done while you're working and hand it back over to them. So it really empowers everyone to be able to work and continue that work, as long as you have the processes in place that empower that sort of workflow. So yeah, really, really great stuff there. We're coming up on a half hour. So I want to get, and this is a very tricky question for some, but maybe you're great at distilling things this way. If people are listening to this interview and want to walk away with one takeaway, best practice for managing a remote and or asynchronous team, what is that? What is that top tip from you?
I would say make sure that people know what is expected of them at work. I think that was the very first thing I mentioned
Yeah.
that I pulled out of that 12 Elements of Great Management book. If everybody knows what's expected, it's very difficult to get the thing wrong, whatever that thing is, right? It could be a deliverable. It could be for how people are managing their time. It could be any, as long as you're clear on what's expected, everything else becomes easier because you can always point back to like, hey, we talked about this. This is what was expected in this scenario, or this was expected for this situation.
Yeah, I love that. You can always point back to it. You can come back to it when there's an issue. You can come back to it when they're doing great and say, hey, this is what we wanted. This is what you're doing above and beyond. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fantastic.
And
Absolutely.
it makes
Setting
it possible
expectations.
to define a process. You can't define a process if you don't know what the expected outcome is. So it's the
Yeah.
starting point for everything.
Starting point for hiring for a new position, right? What are you hiring this person for? What are they going to do? What's the goal?
Yeah.
So having
Why,
that, yeah, I love that.
why
That's a
does your
great
business
takeaway.
exist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go as deep as you need to go, as granular, and then, take it out from there. I love that, Brian. It's a great tip, really important tip for this as well. So I'm just going to check as we wrap things up to see if there were any questions that came in from folks watching. I know we've got folks watching on Facebook and LinkedIn, so thank you all for watching and joining us today. There was one question, and this harkens back to your experience with training and courses, and let me find it. Now I can't find it. It was essentially, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but what would you recommend for an LMS, a learning management system, for folks who are trying to create their own course, kind of for what their expertise is, whether they're starting a coaching program or something like that? Is there a good beginner level one?
There are two. They're both incredible. If you have a WordPress site, LearnDash LMS is one of the best, one of the two best. The other best is Sensei. And I'm surprised to say that Sensei kind of disappeared for a long time there. And then just last year, maybe in 2022, they showed up with a ton of enhancements that made it incredible again. And so if you pick Sensei or LearnDash, you're probably in for a good time for getting things. And my other advice, you could pick literally anything. Think about the learner outcome and try to keep the delivery of the material as simple as possible. I like to think of it as like less but better. What's the most essential thing that we need to deliver, and what's the simplest way to deliver that experience?
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those two tools are top of mind for anyone who runs a WordPress site. They're great.
Fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate that, Brian. And thank you so much. We'll wrap things up now. So, Brian, where can folks find you? Where's the best place to follow along?
Yeah, WPSessions.com is probably the easiest one to pronounce and remember. I have collected hundreds of experts from around the world over the last decade to talk about all kinds of topics related to running a WordPress business, making WordPress websites, and also things that aren't specific to building things with WordPress, but are like working on your team and how do we manage client expectations and all those things that like transcend the specific tools we're working on. And with that, recently kicked off a weekly newsletter that's been very well received, where I talk about different aspects of running a business and sometimes specific things like how do we manage these e-commerce specific things with WooCommerce or WordPress, and then more generically, how do we deliver better experiences through automation, with insightful examples of like when I mess up and here's what I learned from that. So if you go to wpsessions.com, somewhere at the bottom of the page, you can join the mailing list and hear what I
Awesome.
think every week.
Perfect. Fantastic. And there was something you said right before we went live that I want to make sure we get into this interview. And it was your kind of thought process on how you, it started with ruminate.
Yes. Read, READ, ruminate, eliminate, automate and delegate as my way of thinking through tasks. Like first ruminate, like what are all of the different things that I need to do that I do in a given day or week or month or quarter or year? Do I need to do these? Can we just eliminate them? Is this busy work? Is it unnecessary? Does it no longer serve a purpose? Let's get rid of it. And then of what's left, can any of this be done by a machine? If so, make the machine do it. We don't need to take care of any of this. And then anything that's left, can I delegate this to somebody else? Can someone who is not me do this thing at least as good or better than me, or in a way that brings me more joy to not have to do anymore?
I love that.
Yeah.
I think everyone can benefit from doing a little reading every day.
Yep. You
Or
should.
maybe on Mondays. Start your Mondays with
Yeah.
reading, right?
And with that, one more insight. You should never delegate something that you can automate, and you should never automate something that you can eliminate. So going in that order is really
Got to
important,
go in the
because
right order.
if you automate something that could be eliminated, you're wasting time and machine resources. If you're delegating something that could be automated, you're wasting human time. So just get to the essentials.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that's a great place to wrap things up. Brian, thank you so much for your time today, and all of your expertise. You're the perfect person to be talking to about managing remote teams and asynchronous teams and setting expectations and all of that. You have a great way of thinking about it, and it really shines through. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your time with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yep, thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in live. We will have this recording available soon. So check your emails and we'll be sharing that out soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.